Thursday, July 5th, and at 6 p.m. we'll start with roll call attendance. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilmember Milam.
Here.
Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Councilmember Palmer.
Here.
Councilmember Borton.
Here.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Here.
Mayor DeVeard.
Item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all join us in a pledge to our flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll be led by Larry Woodard with our community invocation. I'll invite you to please join us in the invocation or take this as an opportunity for a moment of reflection. And maybe, Larry, you can kick us off with introducing your guests.
My guests with us tonight are Sidney Mabodza and his wife from Harare, Zimbabwe. He's the president of a small Bible college there in Zimbabwe. And today he got to meet ex-Governor Phil Batt. Now he's met the mayor, and he says, I would have never had this happen in Zimbabwe.
Well, welcome.
So we're glad to have him with us. I won't go through the directory of the city departments tonight in my prayer, but I will instead focus on the 4th of July. Our dear Heavenly Father, we live in a land of the free and the home of the brave, and we have just remembered how our forefathers signed the Declaration of Independence from Great Britain in 1776. The Liberty Quartet was in town this past Sunday night at Valley Shepherd, and they certainly lifted our spirits with all of the songs about liberty. We often take for granted the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans, and we sometimes think it came at no cost. But in fact, it cost the lives of 14 of the original 56 signers, and another 2 had their sons killed during that war. So the freedoms we've enjoyed over the large part of the last 200 years have been through the sacrifices made. In our family, we had an uncle who fought in Europe during World War II, and we lucked out when no family members served in Korea or Vietnam. But we sure made up for it in the battles in Iraq and Afghanistan when our grandson was wounded 6 times as a Special Forces sergeant. We are blessed that he returned and now lives and works with his family in Twin Falls. So freedom is an easy word to say, but it's difficult to maintain. And this evening, before this council takes up its regular city business, I want to ask a special blessing on the mayor and this council who strive monthly to keep Meridian as a place of peace and freedom. However, in reading the most recent police blotter, our uniformed police are having an increasingly dangerous time trying to protect the citizens of Meridian from drugs, violence, and criminal mischief. I pray tonight for their safety as they risk their lives to make ours safe. We are in the middle of our summer heat. People are out and about at late hours. Most of our citizens are enjoying the many parks and swimming pools, but there's a small minority that is up to mischief and endanger others. Help us to remain vigilant to the threats around us, and may Meridian continue to be a place where it's great to raise our families. Tonight I ask for a blessing on city employees whose pictures never show up in the paper, whose jobs are so critical to the smooth working of our city, and yet few people know them. Bless these employees who have no major title, but whose job is critical to keeping Meridian #1 in the nation. As we stop to remember those who have given their very last breath for our freedoms, bless their families, and may they know that in Meridian, Idaho, we have not forgotten them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And thank you for those important reminders.
You bet.
Item number 4 is the adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
on the agenda, Under 8A, staff requests this be moved to consent item as item 6R, which is H2016-0050. Under 10A, the ordinance number is 16-1699, and 10B, the ordinance number is 16-1700, and with that, I move we approve the amended agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 5 is a proclamation. I'll go down to the podium, ask Steve to join me. So the month of July is Parks and Recreation Month, and so this proclamation is for that purpose to remind us of all the activities and blessings we have in our community on those open spaces and classes that make us a community that plays together and as well as working together. So whereas on March 26, 2009, the U.S. House of Representatives designated July as Parks and Recreation Month to recognize the importance of park and recreation facilities. And whereas the city of Meridian, Idaho, proudly provides 255 acres of developed parkland, which hosts awesome events such as Cable One Movie Night, Kleiner Park Live, the Meridian Barn Sour Fun Run, the Community Block Party Unplug and Be Outside Week, Gene Kleiner Day, and the Meridian Independence Day Festival, encouraging the use of our parks and outdoor activity. And whereas children and adults of all ages enjoy soccer, basketball, football, baseball, golf, tennis, volleyball, softball, disc golf, and much more, pickleball should be in there, and much more through the many classes, camps, and lessons offered in our parks. And whereas the Meridian Parks and Recreation Department, also known as the Department of Fun, could not do it alone. We have wonderful partnerships with many youth sports organizations and others to offer additional park amenities that bring kids and families to our parks and create lasting memories. And whereas in 2015 alone, the Department of Fun celebrated the opening of a new tennis complex, an award-winning dog park, and also in 2015, the department had over 12,000 park shelter reservations and had 5,111 players who participated on 531 teams. Therefore, I, Mayor Tammy DeVeert, hereby proclaim the month of July to be Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Meridian and challenge all citizens to participate in Parks and Recreation Month by getting out and visiting one or more of our wonderful parks. So I'll present this to Steve, our director, and Steve, invite you to make any comments you would like to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say thank you. We love Parks and Recreation in the City of Meridian, and our mantra is 3 words: quality, community, and fun. We believe in quality facilities, building our community, and providing fun opportunities to create lasting memories for families here in the city. And it's our goal and hope that we accomplish that. And as part of Parks and Recreation Month, we hope to promote some fun activities that will bring people out to the parks. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, item number 6 is under our consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
as stated earlier, item 8A has been made 6R, and that is H2016-0050. And with that, I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended, and for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion by council? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move to item 8A, which is the final plat continued
So that
from
was on the consent.
June 28th. That was moved to the consent agenda. And so item 8B is a final plat, also continued from July 28th for H 2016-0070.
Madam,
Doing this?
yes, they're really
Wow.
scraping the bottom of the barrel tonight. So, Madam Mayor and council members, that, as you mentioned, the last time this was heard, Becky McKay, the applicant's representative, requested continuance of this item in order to obtain approval from her client on the acceptance of the conditions of approval in the staff report. This afternoon, we got written documentation from Ms. McKay that the applicant is in agreement with the conditions of approval contained in the staff report. So I'm happy to report that there are no outstanding issues on this item.
We're on the wrong one.
We're on item 8B,
Oh, I'm very sorry.
but thank you
You
for
did,
that.
you did say, all right.
Made Mike wonder a little bit.
Little more clarity on the previous item, which you've already dealt with.
You just wanted to emphasize your first remark.
That's it, that you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Yes. Got it. So for Bainbridge Park subdivision final plat, there are no outstanding issues except for one. The applicant is requesting modification of condition 19, dealing with when water and sewer easements outside of public rights-of-way are to be provided. The current condition wording calls for the easement to be reviewed and approved before approval of the development plan. The applicant would like to modify this to allow easement approval before the signature of the final plat by the city engineer. And I believe Mike Wardle wants to say a few words about this.
Thank you for joining us, Mike. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Mike Wardle, Brighton Corporation, 12601 West Explorer Drive in Boise. And I do appreciate the opportunity for just a moment. I mentioned last week we were on the second development agreement modification for what proved to be standard conditions of approval that don't necessarily apply in that particular case. The last two items were commercial subdivisions and really had a condition that was applicable more to the residential. As we're getting into these conditions more and more, we're finding there's some questions about interpretation. And I spoke with staff this morning, concerned that there may be an interpretation issue with this plat on fulfillment of that condition 19. That may or may not be the case as we've kind of worked through and discussed it during the course of the day. However, it's an issue that will come up again in the future. So our offer to the council in this request was that we would like to work with staff, and staff has indicated more than a willingness to do so, so that we can make sure that interpretation of these conditions don't create a problem either for us or for you in that sense. However, that being the case, I still think it would be appropriate, and I do ask for the modification that was requested, simply to indicate that you have control over the platting process by affixing the city's engineer signature on the plat. Everything has to be done in order to accomplish that. Nothing really changes at the outcome, but it certainly increases the potential for speeding up the process at the beginning. So I would be happy to answer your questions, but I do ask for that one modification and then the privilege to work with staff on dealing with these long-term questions down the road.
Okay.
Nothing more than that, Madam Mayor.
Council, any question? Do you have anything? Bruce?
Clint, did you want to say a few words about this?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this condition has been in the staff reports for quite some time. Some of the reasoning behind it, one of the key reasons was, say, Mike had mentioned commercial developments. Well, commercial developments a lot of times don't require a plat. So if we change the condition to say final plat, but the commercial development doesn't necessarily require a plat, it makes it tough to get those easements. So to requiring a development plan approval, especially with the commercial side of developments, is a really, I believe, is a really good thing, because then you have some way to get the easements done before the development plan's approved. So in this case, we don't necessarily wouldn't want to recommend against what Mike's suggesting, but we would like the opportunity, as he has suggested, to discuss it with internally with the group, with Bruce and Bruce Chatterton and the rest of the folks, before we would make an official change to the conditions.
And Madam Mayor and council members, as Clint said, we don't have an objection to making this change. We invite the conversation. We're going to be having a discussion with our development customers coming up fairly soon of process changes, and this certainly, we invite this to be one of those issues to discuss.
Madam Mayor, just for one point of clarity, I had this same conversation with another staff member today. I appreciate Clint's comment, but it was noted that if a commercial subdivision doesn't require a plat, this condition never comes up. It's not applied to a plat. So in this case, it's applied to a residential project, and so we'll work it out. But it's just something that interpretation of that condition has become an issue of concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like you'll have a number of things on that list. So thank you for being here. Council, anything further on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve the final plat on H 2016-0070, and on condition 19, we do the modification. And while this isn't an official part of the motion, I would think the staff would take a good hard look at this ordinance with the development group. And with that, I move we approve it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 8B. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 8C is under Community Development Block Grant Administrator, so I'm going to turn this over to Sean.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to come to you tonight. The first thing that we need to do is, this is the start of our draft action plan period, and so on the agenda we do have a opening of the public comment period, which will close on August 9th with a public hearing. So between now and then, we can receive public comment. The action plan can change in draft form until council reviews it again on August 9th, which we will have the actual hearing. So that's what we need to do with that particular agenda item, Madam Mayor.
Okay, with your comments, I will officially open the public hearing for comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're going to move on to the next agenda item.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so this is again from the committee. We sat down with all of the applications that we had for CDBG for this year. The committee is putting forth these recommendations in this particular, or through me, through this particular presentation. And again, this is the draft action plan, so please, comments or anything else that we want to look at between now and August 9th, things that we might need to change, questions that you'll have for me to take back to the applicants, please do so I can run those down. I'd like to start this with just the snapshot of our LMI. You've all seen this picture before. I like this particular slide because it breaks out pretty clearly with the major roads where our low-income area actually is in terms of we're a 35.5% exception community. So anything above 35.5% of low income for that area gets coded as such. This one I like also because it actually tells you what those percentages are, so you can see where the concentrations are. There are a few areas at the corners on the outsides that you might suspect, and they are indeed a low-income area, but because those census blocks are so big and the data is aggregate, you're never going to see those display as a full percentage. But we can always do, and this is something for council to remember too, we can always do an income survey in those areas that we know if there's an actual project that we really think needs to go there, and we can get that information, and we're allowed to do projects outside of the LMI doing it that way. And just a quick little picture of some of the past projects that we've done for CDBG. The two on the top there, the all-use playground and the fitness path, those were at Meridian Elementary. The fitness path with the equipment there is what was done last year. And then, of course, the Meridian Food Bank, who is always on the list for the applicants and always does a pretty good job of turning pennies into dollars with their resources that they have and the friendships and the community that they have with the different organizations. And then this was Idaho Avenue Sidewalk. This is just my picture when I got out there when they first started building it, and it was my first infrastructure project with the city actually carrying it forward, so I thought that that was kind of neat. But just as an idea of some of the different things that we can do with CDBG, and this is not the end-all be-all, clearly, but these are things that we have done.
Sean, I would say on the fitness path at Meridian Elementary School, I went out and walked with them a couple of times, and those kids are so ecstatic and so proud of it. I mean, these kids really don't have too much, and they've really taken ownership and pride in this pathway and know that it's an investment in them. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for our 2016 action plan, we'll start with the basics. $356,000 roughly, that's an 8% increase. So once again, I think this is 4 years in a row our allotment continues to go up. Public services, 15%, that is the rule. We can't spend any more than 50% of any year's allocation. That turns out to be $53,000. And then administration is capped at 20. We're keeping the administration the same as what we asked for last year, which is about 19%. And just understand too, that's not all of my salary. That is the comprehensive plan, the consolidated plan. There's all sorts of things blown in there too. Any planning that we do, if we do income surveys, fair housing activities, all of that is also within that particular amount. And again, it's actually higher now and last year and next year, just so you're aware, because we're doing that consolidated plan, and that is going to start right now. So we're using this year's money to start it, this money to continue it, and then the third year's money to finish that out with them coming to council with the new consolidated plan and finishing that with you. So just so you know why that may seem inflated now, and it's just not based on the fact that we have to procure and do that. This is our application process in summary. We did away with a couple of smaller, I don't know what you'd call them, the extra hoops to jump through, letters that they need to send for. If you were an applicant that you wanted to submit an application, we worked with you before or we haven't, and you had a project that you called me and you said, I think this will qualify. If I told you it qualified, submit an application. I'd rather just have applications than have to go through a back and forth with letters, so I'm trying to simplify that process. And because of that, we got more applications asking for more money than we actually have, making it a little bit more of a competitive process. So I thought that was actually a good thing. The projects were ranked by the scoring committee. We don't actually score them by number anymore. It's just looking at the actual, the action plan, the consolidated plan. What are these trying to do? What is their capacity to meet the need? What's the project? Do we need that? And then ranking that on top of each other. I want to make a quick note about our citizens that showed up. James Lucker and Gretchen Caserati from the library. It is really, really important that we have members of the community that show up that are not representatives of the city, that are not that don't work in the finance department or on council. The way that they look at things is vastly different from the way that I look at things on a day-to-day basis, so I do want to thank them for coming, and hopefully we can continue to grow that community interaction with actual citizens like we have now. And James is a great guy just because he's always throwing something else out there that we didn't think about from a citizen standpoint, so I do want to thank them publicly.
I'll attest to that as well.
So one of the things that I want to make everybody aware of, so I'm a 3/4 employee, which means I have to look at these projects too and tell the committee, I can't do all of that. And we have a lot of really robust projects. And so that's part of our dialogue and discussion within that committee. So that is one of those factors that we have to look at and says, can Sean do 12 projects? Probably not. So we look at 7 or 8 or 6, and then look at the robustness of that individual project, that level of rigor, and so that was part of that conversation. But then we look at what the goals and the outcomes that are trying to be attained by the project itself. Does it meet our consolidated plan? And does the organization have the capacity to carry that out, and do we know that, or are they just saying that? So we go through that process and we try to evaluate. And sometimes we walk away with questions, as you'll see a little bit later tonight, that we need answered. Non-public service projects, which is any infrastructure project that wasn't in the public service category, if they didn't meet and they were qualified, we ranked them like we did last year as an alternate project, so that we will have extra projects in the action plan that we can go back without doing a substantial amendment and trigger if we have a community center facade project that doesn't go forward. And I think that that's worked well, and hopefully that'll work well in the future, and we'll always save ourselves a little extra time by moving to a project that council's already approved, as opposed to coming back and let's rethink this again. So this is just the overview of the national objectives of the CDBG program. So these goals don't change. These goals are part and parcel of what the CDBG program is. So we always have to strive to meet these goals with anything that we do. Every project has to fit these to a T. They're extremely ambiguous and they're very broad, and they don't give very good breakdown or check blocks of what actually meets that. So we have to dip into regulations and see and look at other private or previously done projects to try to make those fit. And we have HUD always to bounce those off of. But just so that you're aware that these are the things that we actually have to hit, or it's not a qualifiable project. The slum and blight piece for council, the community center facade project actually informed us that we have an issue and we need to have a plan and assessment. We are currently right now about to, through myself and purchasing, secure a contract with a local engineering firm to do that for us. I will be soliciting some council help if anyone would like to be a part of that steering committee of what we're going to look at, as well as inviting MDC and some other folks. I just wanted you aware that we're about to move forward with that. It's a good opportunity for me to let you guys know that that's what we want to do. I won't read through this, and I don't ask you to, but later on this would be a really good idea if you could. These are our strategies that we currently have in our consolidated plan. These are going to change next year, or they won't, depending on what we get included in our new consolidated plan. For this year, I can tell you that affordable housing and strategic and the suitable living environment are what we're hitting. That's just based on the applications that came in. It's also a good thing because as long as we can't do slum and blight projects and we can't do things that are directly impactful for economic development, double tapping the housing, double tapping the infrastructure projects looks a lot better than not doing something entirely. So for our public service applications, we had a total of 4. We are currently recommending funding 3. We had more ask than we had to give, which is last year. That was, if you remember, that was inverse. We were able to give a little bit more to the food bank because we just had extra money in that pool. We didn't this time. So the Scoria Committee recommends funding the following ways, with a caveat that happened right before this council meeting. The Care Enough to Share, we all loved it in terms of the committee. Everybody that was there thought it was a great program. We decided not to push it forward for funding. However, Parks just informed me just before that it's not $7,500 that they're super interested in. It's $1,000 or $1,500 if that was something that the committee would be and that council would be willing to use, that they could use that amount of money to still carry forth that Care Enough to Share program. And so I told them that I would make that mention here as a correction. The issue there was we needed to find about $10,000 or $11,000 to take away, and we did that by that particular project, as well as the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club, we've worked with them before. We were concerned about their capacity to meet $15,000. It's been about 10 or 11. So we moved them. We moved the football just so that they could actually commit to that. We know that they can, but that also freed up a little bit extra money that we were going to say give to the food bank like we did last year. But if council so desired, we could move that to Care Enough to Share in the amount of $1,448, whatever was the overage. So just so that council is aware. Jesse Tree Homeless Prevention, I want to talk about that just because we've never done it, but Boise has. Nampa is in the same boat we are, that they're currently entertaining them. Jesse Tree as an organization does a one-time benefit to individuals who are about to become homeless. So it's homelessness prevention. So if I just got a new job and I'm about to miss my house payment, so I'm going to get kicked out, I'm going to miss my rent, that's what that's there for. It's one time for the rest of your life. So it's one thing, one time, and the way that they have that divvied up for Meridian is I think about $1,000 for the first few months, trying to work with one individual or two, and then they're going to trickle that off to about $500 per month for the rest of it. So it's not the entire rent. Sometimes it's just what they need for the rent. They may be $500 short, they may be $200 short, but it's one time. So we recommended putting that forward as a homeless prevention piece under public service. An issue with public service that we noted the last 2 years in a row, because we've had to work with Catch, and Catch is a fantastic organization, but they have had a really troublesome time trying to draw down in Meridian because of some of the self-inflicted things that we've done with the program. We required them to house in Meridian from Meridian. That became really difficult because they can't find quote-unquote HUD-qualified homeless people in Meridian because we tend to double up. Family members take care of each other. You're living with your brother-in-law and your family for a time being, which we would consider maybe homeless because you don't have one of your own. HUD does not consider that homeless. In other places like Boise and Nampa, they're able to operate a little bit differently because they have a bigger pool to pull from. They have shelters, they have agencies that are providing them with very quick housing turnover so they can actually use those as individuals in their program to quickly rehouse wherever they'd like to rehouse them. So because of things like that, and that's just something that, that Catch has noted, and they're going to try to do this again in another year. Catch wants to continue to work with Meridian, rethink that model a little bit about how it applies to a place like Meridian as opposed to a place like Boise. What that leaves us is 2 years that they're not going to spend. Last year they weren't able to expend, as we know. This year I know that they're not going to be able to expend. They did not apply this year because they know that. So what I'd like to ask council is within this next action plan, I would like to trigger something in the action plan that says sometime around June, sometime during the action plan, if we know that we're going to have public service dollars that are not going to be expended up to our 15%, instead of letting them fall through public service and then using them somewhere else, why don't we use them for public service, what we earmarked them for, but maybe one of the organizations that has the capacity to spend. As an example, the food bank that we know, we could probably give them $100,000 and they can probably spend all that money. So as an idea for, and this is just an idea for council, as an idea for a way to keep that strong, that 15% public service strong, as opposed to going 9% at the end of the year because we didn't do it. So I offer that up as an idea, and I'd like to include it, so I'd like council to tell me if that's okay for me to put that in. And again, we can do that on the 9th. Non-public service applications. 5 applications submitted for a total funding of $400,000. So that's way more this year than what we had to use, again, inverse from last year. Funding, or rather, the scoring committee recommends funding 4 of the 5. Obviously, we had to cut back on 1 or 2 of the projects, but we did change the paradigm here. We're actually asking for an alternate that they didn't ask for, and I'll explain here in a second. The first one here is low-income mixed. It's a low-income housing tax credit mixed income development. It's on 2.5 Street, and I have a couple of slides here to go through towards the end. I'm not going to be joined by a representative of VCD who is hopefully going to be here to talk a little bit more about it. But what this is, and just so I can talk through it a little.
He's behind you.
Oh, you do? You were able to be here? Okay. So we will have someone able to talk about VCD, so I can talk a little less about it because they're the experts. So this is a mixed income housing development, 2.5 Street over by the Christian church just down the road here. That's the area. It's zoned Old Town. It's something that they can do there. It's going to be about 61% low income, and the rest of it's market rate. And there's some pictures that we have from other projects that they've done in Garden City that we'll be able to go through. But they're asking for $50,000. We recommended $50,000. However, the committee did say there was lots of questions that we had about what that means and what kind of project this is. If it was any other type of development, they can put apartments in that particular place. But because this is an interesting animal, low-income housing tax credits, mixed income, partnered with a nonprofit organization, how does that work? We asked if they would show up and come to talk to you guys about what that would be and what questions you may have. Ada County Housing Authority and Neighborhood Housing Services, we work with them frequently. We did that last year and the year before. They asked for $50,000 apiece. However, both of them still have money from a previous year. So in an effort to try to lower what we have, we gave them $30,000 as a recommendation to council, which would still allow them to do what they're doing now, but they also have to expend down the money they have from previous years, as opposed to letting them hang on to extra. Meridian Public Works Streetlight, Austin Peterson has developed in one of the low-income sections of the LMI a growing map of places that he knows are deficient in lighting. And so what he has done is he has 2 streets that he has picked out for, if I were to do these, if I were to prioritize, these would be the 2 streets I would do right now today. And so he's actually going to go ahead and do the rest of the LMI for future projects because we have lots of gaps in lighting as he's coming to know now. So he asked for $150,000 from Public Works. Again, we had to lower the cap, and so 124 is what we're actually putting in there. The last project was Meridian Development Corporation asked for sidewalk improvements. We did this last year. They asked for a certain amount for sidewalk improvements. We put it as an alternate project. We're probably going to trigger that project this year. However, where they want to do this is on 2.5 Street also, the east side of 2.5 Street. And after meeting with Justin Lucas from ACHD, and I sat in on the scoping committee, the grant committee here had to really take a look at when they could get this done. And $100,000 is not a whole lot of money for what they might need to do on 2.5 Street, curb, gutter, sewer, all of those things. So, without knowing, and Justin Lucas said that they won't know until the end of fall, midwinter. And once we know that, then we'll have a project that if they can afford it and if they can put it in their budget, we'll be able to trigger that too, should we have additional funds. If not, they can come back to council next year with a scoped project and say, hey, we'd like to continue this project that we came up with. And they'd already have it done from ACHD. So we put that in there. And since we took some money away from Public Works to make the dollars make sense, we thought that putting Public Works project for streetlights, because we have plenty of areas we can do those as a fallback project, as an earmark for $50,000, which we don't have and we're not asking for. That's only if another project were to fall through. But the committee did feel that that was a appropriate project to leverage, an infrastructure project to leverage those dollars for, should they come available. And it's not Chance Hobbs.
No.
I'm sorry, what is your name, sir?
Doug Crowder.
So Doug Crowder from VCD is here, and I'd like to, if that's okay, I'd like to have him speak a few minutes. I've got some slides from that they had given me about projects that they had done and what this project actually is, what a low-income housing tax project would be here.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet. You'll have to work the slides. I've never seen them. So
I'll work the slides for you.
Hi, my name's Doug Crowther. I'm a member of VCD. We formed a few years ago, and one of the main things that we do is for tax credit housing. We all have experience in it for a long period of time. I've done it since about 2004, mainly as a project manager and in construction, and I still fill that role with VCD. What we try to do, and where we focused in on 2.5 Street specifically, is because what we look for is mainly an infill project, if we can, within an urban environment, and use the tax credit base as a vehicle to help other development within the area and lift it up. And kind of try to take some of that, areas that are a little more run down, or blighted, and revamp them and use something that people wouldn't even know may be quote-unquote low-income housing to actually bring the property values up and do infrastructure improvements within an area. We did this successfully down at Trailwinds Project, which is in Garden City. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It was some mobile home parks that had been half abandoned, and the trailers that were in it were run down. We identified the area because of the amenities that were right there. In that case, we had the Boys and Girls Club right down the street. We had a school. We had the river and the green belt right there. We had an easy commute to a downtown area and into a core, and plus the revamping of Garden City, which is kind of, you've got all that great land that runs up and down the river, and a lot of it is pretty heavy industrial, that's switching over and getting abandoned. So we thought that we could help spur this growth by placing something nice right there down in the middle of it. And 2.5 Street, we see kind of the same opportunity, as it's close to your downtown core, and there's a lot of walkable amenities within the city of Meridian. nearby. So we kind of earmarked that as a spot that said, yes, this is the type of area that we'd like to come into, build a similar structure. It's not the same. Everything has to be adapted for the environment, but do a mixed income development there. We find that the mixed income is much better. Try to get some market rates in there. You want to have a good mix, a demographic of people. It's much more successful to see that type of thing. And in that, with down at, I see a full rendering of what's happening across the street now from Trailwinds, which is the apartment complex. And if you look up there on the slide, you have the proposed development, which is now fully platted, and actually on Monday it's supposedly a slam dunk, but the plat will be approved for the townhouses and residential that go in across the street. Sidewalks were expanded. We added new water lines, sewer lines. We did the street trees and the streetscape in there, and allowed for the area to now have a walkability standard where before it didn't exist. And so you can kind of see the same type of concept that we're believing in here, to use the CDBG funds to go in and add that type of feel to the neighborhood. We're still kind of flip-flopping the complex and trying to make sure we maximize the usability of the site. And of course, all that will be submitted. I think there was did you get where'd he go? Did you get the rendering that we had for this site? You didn't get that?
I did not. That doesn't mean that
Okay.
the planners did not.
Okay. It would be a taller building here. We'd be using, under parking on this case to try to make sure that we meet the demands of the parking infrastructure here. But it would be in similar style, most likely. The units would be the same, and I'd invite anybody to come down and take a look at them. I mean, they're pretty nice. And hopefully with that, you'd increase the ability for your downtown plan to get moved forward with, some residents in a denser neighborhood that could actually utilize the city of downtown Meridian. And so hopefully everything comes out to be a win-win. So that's
Doug, where's that? Where
this
did
here.
Uh-huh.
This is the future. That's across the street from Trailwinds. And those are townhouses. They are market rate. And that's going to be put in through Parkway Station, which I had a lot to do with the planning of that. And, it was an investment that I felt that was, very viable, given put Trailwinds in. And I'm a businessman. I want to take advantage of, the infrastructure that's being put in, and also work with Garden City to produce those townhouses there, which they'll probably be about in the $270,000 range right there. And that's kind of a nice improvement from what it is right now, which is a commercial zone, which, my office was in there for months in an abandoned building, but, it's trying to demonstrate the growth that can happen out of it. And I don't know what other questions you guys have about this type of development, but willing to ask them or answer anything.
Questions from council? Mr. Palmer.
Mayor. Question actually for police. How busy is your department with the 2.5 street area?
Councilman Palmer, Mayor, it's no different than, I guess, some of our other apartments. It comes and goes. So it's been busy at times and not so bad at others, if that helps.
Follow up, Madam Mayor. Would you anticipate it being busier than normal with low-income housing as opposed to any other apartment development?
Mayor, Councilman Palmer, it really depends on who occupies those residents. I don't know that I can say or predict how it would be. I know that probably doesn't help, but
Just because they're high density doesn't mean that, or low income doesn't mean that makes crime more likely or not.
Yes, it's very difficult to predict crime. It's
What is the percentage of low-income housing that you have in the project in Garden City?
I believe he was correct at about 60%. Oh, in Garden City,
Uh-huh.
we only have 4 out of 64 units that are market rate.
And what is your ratio that you're proposing here?
I believe it is around 30%. I don't have the pro forma in front of me at this moment, and I don't want to misspeak.
But similar to what you have in Garden City?
It's a little higher market rate here. It's a lower percentage of low-income housing.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that I want to qualify on this, and when you talk about tax credits, the program itself is different than what they have in Section 8, which is where the people get vouchers and they're paid the rent. One of the main things is, of course, it's much tougher to get into a low-income housing complex than it is a market rate. You have to pass the background checks and verify the employment, and the qualifications to do so and under those compliance departments are much more stringent. And so they do vet it. I can't tell you that somebody won't move in who's a problem, because you don't know. You know, I mean, nobody can predict the future. But they go through and they look at things like a felony or something like that, and they're disqualified. So they have to be working families, and what they do in lieu of getting the voucher is they physically lower the rent based on your income level between 40 and 60% of the area median income, which is one of the bigger demands in the Ada County area. It's gotten to be a pretty bad problem. The vacancy rates are getting pushed really hard. They're full. Trailwinds is full. And what it is that as the economy grows, we've all talked about the middle class getting outrun. Well, the bottom portion of that middle class now gets to be qualified as low income. And either it's at that 60% range, which is pretty close to a market rate deal, and then you have the 40%, which are the lower end of the bracket in there. So they're working, they just don't have that 1/3 ratio that you set up for a rent. You know, if you're going to pay a mortgage, you're going to do something like that, you only want about 1/3 of your income to go into that. And that's getting more and more to be the case, where it's 50%. And that's what this program is for. It really is, it's kind of a screwy thing that I kind of find out that Reagan is the one who came up with the program in the first place. And his whole thing was to slice away a bunch of tax write-offs for corporations, but he wanted to put it and privatize that whole thing, get rid of the projects run by the government and put it into the hands of the individuals like ourselves and make us own it. So we can't flip it, we can't, you know, build it and turn it over. You're required to hold on to it for a 15-year period minimum. And some states, they'll put in a thing where it has to be operated for 99 years. I think Idaho's 40. So it has to be operated under those guidelines during that time period. And with that private investment, you can't play slumlord. You've got to keep it up, and Boston Capital or whoever's the big investor up there makes sure that you can't make enough money on that thing. You have to make, you know, what you predict on your cash flow. You have to keep your debt ratios down, and you have to keep it at that parameter, and that extra cash has got to go back into it. So it's actually this reason I back it. When I looked into it, and I said, you know, if I'm going to do this kind of stuff, I want to do the right program. So I do believe in it, so I am an advocate. And our goal is to specifically do the program right. And that's to put it in where we feel, doesn't mean it's my opinion, but where does it make sense? Where should this project go, rather than where can it go? And a lot of people will say, well, this scores a certain rate and it's great and everything else. I look at this location and the city of Meridian, I do see the need through the market studies and everything else that we try to generate. And the other thing I see is, if this goes in, I'm helping the guy right over there down on Main Street. And by improving the sidewalk all the way down, I'm helping the walkability all the way from Coal Valley all the way up the block. And I'm turning it into a neighborhood rather than what exists at this present day. So those are the things that we look at in that. You know, as far as like policing and things like that, I guess probably the best thing to say is what did we replace versus what's in there now. Garden City could probably answer some of your questions. You know, I mean, they've had one that went bad. I haven't heard anything bad about what we've put in. So,
No, you definitely have given that area a huge facelift.
yeah.
So,
Right off the ministry.
Clint, I have a question in terms of infrastructure with sewer and water. Are we prepared for the densities that they're suggesting?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, it appears that we are, or we would have to see the actual development plan to really confirm that we have the capacities available there. If we didn't, I'm sure we could probably work with them and come up with a plan to get there, though, if we need to.
Thank you. It was your best guess, anyway. Any questions for Doug?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Palmer?
a couple more. What's your anticipated rent cost for the low-income sections?
Can't answer that right off the top of my head.
Ballpark it?
I would say right now, a two-bedroom at the 40% rate is $570, and then at the upper rate, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it's about $750 right now. And that does vary. They come out with new AMIs, and they adjust it throughout that time period. And that's the max rent you can charge. You know, what they'll do is they'll tell you what the maxes are. And then, you know, if you're having problems filling them, of course, you're going to reduce it down just as management. But so you can get a two-bedroom unit, you know, if you're only making 40% of the AMI, you can get a two-bedroom unit for $530 and a one-bedroom for $400 and some. So it's a pretty good deal. You know, I mean,
Madam Mayor, follow up. And you had mentioned tax credits. So that's the tax credits go to the owner of the building to subsidize his profit in
how it
owning the
works
building?
is, the easiest way I can explain it is probably that the federal government will issue a block of tax credits to a state. And they will say, and it's a competitive round. You have to apply for it and get the award and everything else. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're putting together the basics of a project to do an application. And based on that, what they'll do is they will award you a block of tax credits. Let's say it's $600,000 of tax credits. It goes for 10 years. So that's, in essence, worth $6 million. That's equity that the investor will put in for that dollar's worth of tax credits. So it's a big down payment on your mortgage, which lowers your debt so you can operate it at these reduced rents. That's the way it works, is so that your mortgage payment isn't very big. You can actually reduce your rent load. So that's how it does that answer the question?
Madam Mayor, if I may. That does answer my question, and frankly, it horrifies me. I have a tendency to be fairly blunt, and so I would say please take your project elsewhere. I can never vote for subsidized housing in Meridian. I mean, Meridian is what it is because I don't know if we have it, but we certainly couldn't have very much of it for us to maintain what we have. So I love it that Boise, Garden City, Nampa, anywhere else that wants it can have it. I don't want it here.
Okay.
Mr. Kavner?
Oh, Madam Mayor, I think maybe my question is more for staff now at this point.
Okay. Thank you. And remember, you heard just one council member that said that.
That's okay. I mean, it's America, so.
Any other questions for Doug before he sits down?
Madam Mayor, maybe one, and this is either for Doug or for staff. Doug, if I understand correctly, in order for this project to move forward, he would have to receive some funding from CDBG. Is that
No.
accurate? That's what, Madam Mayor, that's what staff is
It goes
indicating.
towards, one is, the state looks like at it as support, if you get the CBDG, and it does help our application to say that, we're applying for these funds, and it's in essence, it's a commitment by the city itself to invest some in it. And then, so it's basically a plus for us. It's not an absolute requirement.
Madam Mayor, follow up then. So Doug, if I understand correctly, if you weren't to be awarded any CDBG funds, you would still be able to move forward with this project?
Where it would hurt more is in the infrastructure improvements that we would try to make,
Sure.
and the commitments that we would make with the city. And, I believe we were going to come back to you about some TIF financing perhaps that we might work with, which is what we did in Garden City, is we did replace, the water line through the street. That helped. It was on their 5-year replacement plan. We just moved that forward. We did the work, and then they're going to pay us back through some TIF financing. And their sewer line was the same. And then, the sidewalks, and then on Adams Street had some work done to it also. So, there was cooperation between both of us.
Okay.
in that. And that's in essence what this is about.
Mayor?
Ms. Mylum?
Doug, I have a question. So if you were awarded this money, you still have another application to fill out. So that doesn't mean that you're even moving forward with your project at all unless you are granted these tax credits?
Yes, at this time, the way it's structured, that's the way it would go. I mean, we would try to restructure the thing if we can. I mean, I believe in the project. This is a good vehicle, plus we're able to partner with a nonprofit, which is the housing company that, they also manage the project at the same time, so they own and manage. And so that type of partnership right now is, basically our operating structures. We locate these things and try to make sure it's the right type of project, and then we walk it right through all the way. And then, we stay in an ownership capacity, so we get a little bit of cash flow from it, but it's pretty minimal.
Anything further? Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, a couple of things of clarification. Yes, we do have several low-income housing / subsidized housing projects within the city of Meridian themselves. We also have hundreds of housing vouchers or other subsidized forms from the Housing Authority that are sight unseen because we don't know where they are because they live next door to you. So just to be clear that we do have those types of programs that are operating here, they do exist. So just to make that clarification.
Well, and Sean, I think it's also important to note that because of the requirements to get the vouchers and to rent in these areas, they do background checks, and you have a little bit more scrubbing than you have in other rentals or apartments and single-family homes. So,
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. Palmer.
And while background checks may help prevent some future crime being moved in, it says nothing about the people's ability to maintain what's provided to them when they have very little ownership over what surrounds them. It's not theirs. They typically don't care about it.
Madam Mayor, Councilman, I think that we can get some extra information from VCD, but the reason why they partner with the housing company is that they oversee that process, and because they're able to reinvest over a period of time to keep the broken window from not being broken, to keep the facades up, the roofs on, and to keep that looking. It's also why they have the market rate on the other side of that, to have the larger, nicer apartment on the other side to not separate just simply low-income people into one building, but there's a little bit more of a mixture there. So there is an incentive there, if nothing else, and then on the developer's part.
Yeah, and I'd like to, comment on that to a certain extent just from personal experience. Okay, it's not studies or anything else. My personal experience before I moved into tax credit projects, I was in landscape construction for a long time, and then I became a project manager. And one of the larger projects I worked on was the conversion of 208 market rate units up in the Boise foothills. It's off of Brumback, and it used to be the Central Park Apartments, and I made the joke that I used to party up there in college, and it hadn't changed. The complex, you know, one of the guys that asked me, why'd the guy buy it? And I said, I don't know, and he's also in development, and he said, you don't have enough fingers for that dike. It was full market rate, but the investors who owned it were back in Chicago. And they didn't care what that property looked like, as long as they were getting their cap rate at the desirable level to sell it. And the biggest change that we made, luckily the guy who bought it was very invested in it. It was a large purchase for him. He paid millions and millions of dollars for this thing. And what we did was instantly put a red tag on every vehicle that was sitting up on blocks. We tore out all what I called the rapist bushes, you know, these big overgrown things, started cleaning it up, and the people who wanted to live a bad life left. They hated it, and they bitched, and they moaned, and they complained. And the people who wanted to be decent loved it. And those people stayed because they saw this positive enforcement going on. And that's the culture of a neighborhood, or it's the culture of a city, or it's the culture of any place. And now when you move a person in to a decent environment, and they're told, and they see the grounds are kept up, and it's clean, there's pressure, there's peer pressure to keep it up. Now, I'm not going to tell you that somebody's not going to move in and trash a unit. I guarantee you're going to get a few of that. But the management company's responsibility is to upkeep that under the private sector, and I take it very personally as an owner, to go in there. And if I don't see it kept up, do you think I'm going to sit back and say, I don't care? Frankly, sir, it is insulting in that regard. That, you know, just because a person can't make enough to pay anymore is a fine line in today's economy. These people don't make $10,000 a year. We're talking about $35,000, $36,000 a year that fall into this type of income bracket. So if the culture's not maintained, you come after me. And you come after the housing company, and you tell them to keep the decent people living there. And you get the riffraff out. And that's by just, I bet you have people in your neighborhood that you go, I wish he'd take care of his yard. There are a lot of people that are working pretty hard trying to get out of those stuff, and some of them work for cities. And a lot of your employees and even police officers fall under that category. So, you know, let's not say that it's going to go downhill. These things look nicer than that stuff that I went and took care of. A lot nicer. You know, I've had these officers come by and help me clean up crack houses.
Thank you, Doug.
Madam Mayor. So since that was the last piece that we had to talk about, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands, I'm not an advocate. I like some of these projects, but I'm here to make sure that the information flows and that you guys get the right information. And if I don't have it, I'll run it down for you. So just want to make sure that the facts are known. Do we have any questions for me or any information from council that I'd like to take away with to go find information for?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
Couple questions and then maybe some comments. Sean, first one related to care enough to share and the 1,500. Can you articulate, is there a tipping point for you with the amount of time that it takes for you to be involved in a project with the amount of money that we're choosing to allocate? And is there cost benefit isn't maybe the right term, but the amount of your time, recognizing that you're not a full-time, that's just focused solely on this, is where's that sweet spot at?
Madam Mayor, Councilman, I think that there is a bit of a tipping point, but it has nothing to do with the dollar, just so we're clear that it doesn't matter if it's 100,000 or 1,000. I think we talked about this a little bit. It's the amount that $1,000 makes me work on, and how many hours I spend of my working hours trying to make sure that projects run smoothly. I know that I can say from my boss's standpoint, it's something that he's definitely cautious of, to make sure that if I'm going to be spending that much time on a project, are we getting the same amount of return from that actual project? And so is $1,000 going to tip that? For a project like that, I don't think it would, because it would be in the cataloging that parks would do. It would be in how they maintain that information so that it's inspectable. So that if I came up there at any given time, or whenever they submit a draw request, which is probably the better example, when they submit a draw request to get a reimbursement for $75 or $125, whatever that might be for that month, how long that would take me to go through. And I can't answer that. I can tell you that I've done it for the Boys and Girls Club before, for their same scholarship program. And because they did it quarterly, it was a little arduous going through each individual young person that was in that program and making sure that they were, yes, low income, that they did have this much money, this is how much they spent. But since that was one time, but we're also talking a larger dollar amount for that hour and a half I might have spent going through that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm just trying to give an idea of what it would take for me to actually go through a process like that. And that has nothing to do with setting up the project, making sure that it's in the system, and then tracking that through the CAPER and all of the other resources that I would have to expend doing that. So it would be a lot.
Okay. Mayor, additional question, if I may. Maybe some clarification. In the scoring committee meeting, there was some substantial discussion about that CDBG funding would really be required for the project that we've discussed so much tonight to move forward. It sounds like maybe that's not the case. Can you just provide some clarity for the council on, is it required or is it not required?
Madam Mayor, Councilman, I'm sure, can you explain?
The low income, in the scoring committee, that was a large subject of discussion amongst the scoring committee, was that in order for this presented project, the low income housing to move forward, it would require CDBG funding at that $50,000 level.
I understand.
It sounds like tonight from the applicant that that's not the case, and I'm just trying to get, I think it's important for council to have some clarity on that issue tonight.
I understand. Madam Mayor, Councilman, I think that from my point of view, from my understanding with Chance Hobbs, the individual that was originally going to be here, it may not have stopped them from moving forward. Okay. It would have depreciated their chances, and it would depreciate their chances going through IHFA, because if you're going to answer, and again, this is not my words, but answering every single check block on that application, if you are not answering check block number 2, I'm moving on to another application that has all 5 check blocks. And so as a method of, let's go with a full packet, I think that is correct. And I think that they would agree that that a full packet would be, if they had no other applicants that met that same standard, would they still move forward? I imagine IHFA would. If that clarifies.
It does. Great, thank you.
And remember, you're not making that decision tonight. It would be for the list for public comment and allow people to weigh in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions for Sean? Okay, thank you for your time, and also thank you for pulling together a good mix and looking at the different applications and bringing us back some projects that are a little bit different and giving us time to chew on it.
Madam Mayor, if nothing else, I will try to bring you as many out-of-the-box things but qualifiable things so that everybody gets a good idea of what we can actually do with the program, so that if we decide to do the same old and the one-trick pony stuff, we can do that. But I want to make sure that we're bringing other things so that people can look at what we're able to do. And if that fits Meridian, then I would hope that council would want to do that.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Okay, under department reports, we have 9A under our Parks and Recreation Department, the Department of Fun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Before you tonight to give a project update and close out the discussions about the improvements to the number 9 green. have a brief presentation that I think is on its way. There we go. Okay, so I want to give you the project update, let you know what's been done, and close that out. I also want to recognize that Eric Oas is here in the audience and available for any questions, but as of the motion made by council last fall, the onus was on the department at the administrative level to do the review and come back and report. So I am here tonight. So the Lakeview Golf Course number 9 green project was approved by council on October 13th of 2015. The form was submitted, and this is just a copy of the front page signed by the mayor after the council did approve the project for potential rent relief. The motion that was made, if you'll remember, it was that if the cost of the improvements, the capital improvements to the course were over $8,000, it would be eligible for 100% rent relief. And if that project was under $8,000, it would be eligible for 50% rent relief. There was also a requirement to have staff go out and inspect the improvements and verify all of the expenses to the project. So the project was completed, and we conducted an on-site inspection just a couple of weeks ago on June 24th. A copy of that, or some pictures of the new green are there in the photos taken on that day. Mike Barton and I from the Parks and Recreation Department went out and met with Eric Oas on the site. You can even still see, if you look closely, some of the lines in the green for where the sod's stitched back together, but it looks like it is coming together well. The next part of that was the verification of the finances and the documentation. Finance has reviewed all of the items submitted by Mr. Oas and has approved them on June 30th last week. And copies of all of the detailed copies of all of these items are part of your packet. There should be a copy of the check for every invoice that was part of those expenses. There was also quite a discussion at the council meeting back in October as to whether golf course staff time spent on the project should count. And reviewing the minutes and having legal review them with me, they determined that it was approved to have them count. They just had to document all of the time with everything up to including timesheets, and those are also included in your packets and have been reviewed by finance. So in summary, we have reviewed the costs and verified them with finance. The total is a little over $9,000, which meets the requirement of being over $8,000 to be eligible for up to 100% rent relief, which is $6,000. They seem to have met all of the requirements placed on the project by council last fall. Our recommendation to you is for approval of the project for the requested rent relief. There is a form that is part of your packet that is available, if approved, for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Council, any questions?
Madam
Mr.
Mayor.
Byrne.
I think I know the answer, but Timberstone, was that the general contractor?
They were the general contractor for the improvement out at the green.
And
yes.
and plus we had another 1,300 in staff
Correct.
payroll.
And only about $200 of that $1,300 would be necessary to meet the $8,000 requirement, but he was showing all of his expenses.
I realize that.
Yeah.
But- And then what's a JAG tool? We used one on October 28th, and then we come back and used one on May 27th.
I believe that's the name of
16.
I have to look up the.
Eric's there to back you up if
Eric,
you
you
need.
want to come up? You might.
Me what a JAG tool is. I've heard a lot.
I think it's the name of the company.
I've heard a lot of tools, but,
It's just a rental company, JAG.
oh, okay,
And we rented some equipment from.
Okay.
for the-
And that's Eric Goes for the record.
okay, thank you. Never heard of it. Thank you,
It's a new kind of funky thing called a company.
JAG.
Jag Tool is the name of the company. It looks like it was for a pipe puller and a walk-behind trencher.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
what was the completion date, Steve?
Well, we received the letter on June 10th, but most of the work was done last fall, and then everything was completed in May of this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So we do need council action.
Yep.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we.
Do you want to turn your mic on?
I move that we accept the reconstruction of the green as recommended
And authorize the rent
for the rent,
waiver.
for the golf course rent.
For 100%.
Yeah,
For
in the amount of
100%.
$6,000. I mean, that would be good to amount we need to fill that in the form is the amount of the rent relief.
In lieu of the $6,000 rent.
No, not in lieu.
Granting the relief.
Yeah, in lieu of the rent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting paid, too.
For fiscal year 17.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton?
I just want to applaud Eric and his crew and Steve and Rita and the team with finance. The intent of this was to incentivize capital improvements in the city asset, have some notice to the city, get some tentative approval and guidelines, and then have this verification process with finance and your department. That has worked extremely well, and it's not done last minute. It's not done in September. It's just great timing and a great process. I've seen the green. I think it looks fantastic, and if there's opportunities in future years to make new capital, true capital improvements like that, that's exactly what the city intends you to do. So to each piece of the puzzle that made it happen, greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comment from council? Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Aye. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Ayes, motion carried. Eric, did you want to make any comment? I saw you kind of rise up in your seat.
Madam Mayor, Eric Ois, 4200 West Tallamore Boulevard. Madam Mayor, Council, I just appreciate your comments, Councilman Borton, and thank you for your support. The green turned out just great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 9B is, 9B and C are both under the mayor's office for budget amendments. Many of our activities are conducted through sponsorships and money raised, and this is no exception.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The first amendment you have before you is for $1,921. These were funds that were both raised by MIAC at their annual Ball the Hall event. Those funds were originally to be designated for their youth summit that they hold in the fall, but as they believe they've secured the $5,000 sponsorship from Idaho Power for that event, they'd like to redirect those funds towards the participatory budgeting project to enhance that project by those additional funds. It's also repaying the monies that were used out of the Teen Activities Council budget. In addition, we received $600 from Ada County Farm Bureau in appreciation of the efforts for the Youth Farmers Market. And again, those funds are being dedicated into the Parks Department to help make that a successful event for the remainder of the year. So with that, all these funds are received, or there was still $90 outstanding that we expect to be collecting from the participants. But other than that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Robert. Mr. Byrd.
Robert, on the application we got in our files, 2 of the signatures are not there. Is yours complete? Is it complete?
Yes.
Okay. I just clarifying it.
Well, the important one is yours, Keith.
No, that isn't the important one. Chief
I
Financial.
signed it this morning after Todd did,
Yeah, okay.
and I was gone Friday afternoon.
How come you let him go? Let's go.
Any other questions? Okay.
No more questions, Mayor. Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move we approve the budget amendment for Ball at the Hall and the Meridian Youth Farmers Market, not to exceed amount of $1,921.
Second.
And a second to approve the budget amendment under 9B. There's no discussion. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The second one before you is a $20,000 budget amendment. This is the funds that we received from the Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation as part of our High Five grant city recognition. We received these, the funds just came in this year. Blue Cross of Idaho had been holding them. We had originally thought that we might be carrying forward them till next year. However, with a couple of opportunities that have come up, we would like to get spending authority for these funds as we work on opportunities for this budget year, which could include additional funds for the participatory budgeting project, as well as an item we're working with on the library, Meridian Library District, for a possible bike rental program. We'd like to be able to move forward with either of those given the opportunity this year, and would ask for that spending authority at this time. I'd be happy answering questions.
Thank you, Robert. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
question either for legal or for Robert. For either of those potential options, would those come back as amendments then to us to review? Or if we're granting spending authority tonight, will we see those options presented at a later point in time?
Madam Mayor, if we were to move forward with something with the Meridian Library District, it would be in an agreement of some fashion, that would come back before council if that was the case. If it was the participatory budgeting item, I don't know where that stands in the dialogue, if that one would need to come back or not.
I guess it would come back in terms of an update. We have to get it authorized by Blue Cross, who the grant is from, that these would be expended per the intent of the grant, which was to enhance the health and activity of school-age kids. And both these projects would fall under that. We have had original conversations. We're trying to see what kind of funding gap there is to fill in terms of building the fitness feature that the Youth Council chose for their participatory budgeting process. We also have further work to do in fleshing out the bicycle program with the library and perhaps the private partner to that and managing that. So there's still some moving parts, but the deadline for our finance department is the end of June, and so that's why you don't have specifics in terms of cost allocation.
Madam Mayor, follow up then. If I remember correctly, wasn't this grant designed for tents for the youth farmers market? Is that what this was from?
We received $30,000. Of that $30,000, $10,000 was dedicated towards the Meridian Youth Farmers Market to buy tents and tables. That money has been expended, and that is why we have a uniform look at the youth farmers market, and our youth vendors don't have to have their own.
Sure. Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
Madam Mayor, Robert, question. Sorry, in our fancy government system, it's sideways, so to be able to read it here. On question 2 on the back, it said the request is anticipated to be a zero cost to the city. Is there any circumstance that it would become at all a cost to the city? The word anticipated scares me a little bit.
No.
Correct. No.
Works for me.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
hearing none, I move we approve the budget amendment for the High Five grant project for the not-to-exceed amount of $20,000.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Item 9D is also under the mayor's office. Council, we do have a piece of property that I spoke with our city council president about in terms of its use. And as you know from the survey that we recently participated in, there's a great interest in a permanent home for our history center and for the potential of a children's museum. We have a parks and maintenance facility that's owned by our Public Works Department across the street on Meridian Road. And while we have talked with previous councils on several different ideas, it was recently discussed that this would be a good potential for the future permanent home of a history center and potential children's museum. So I did want to put that out, get you thinking about it. It would be one of those destinations for downtown, and also, as we saw in the survey, certainly an interest of the community as well as a working group that we have focused on a children's museum and how to bring that to Meridian. So I don't know if you have any discussion. I wanted to plant the seed as an opportunity and turn this over to our work group that's considering the Children's Museum to see if this has great potential to as an ideal location for this kind of a feature in our community. I would be willing to entertain any questions. It's actually just planting an idea at this time.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I'm just everyone's favorite person today. I see a lot of formerly used city properties go on to be other things that are not the proper role of government. So if we can't find something that would be more the proper role of government, I'd like to see us sell it. If it's something worth doing, or move on in some other way and stop just maintaining land that isn't being used for its original purpose anymore by the city.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
does this idea have a potential price tag associated with it? I think it's a hard idea for me to wrap my head around, not knowing if it costs X or X squared or X cubed.
Certainly, before we spent any time exploring this, I would like more of a direction from council that I don't want to waste staff time in seeing what it would take to bring it up, at least to even have something in it. And then at that point, I think our responsibility could be done. I think that our attorney's office has looked into, you can't just gift or to a nonprofit. You can turn it over to MDC to for them to look at the best use that would make a destination for a downtown, and then it would be in their court. Otherwise, it would go up to auction, as Councilman Palmer suggested.
Mayor.
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. I think it would have add a lot to our downtown. But as Councilman Kavanagh said, really depending on the price tag. But to me, it sounds like an amazing community partnership idea. So the route that I would want to go would be to, finding somebody that wants to work with us and consume that initial funding, since we have the land.
Again, it was an idea that stemmed from the survey and putting this city asset to being something that was of value to our community. It answers one of those community desires. It also addresses a permanent home for the History Center that's in City Hall, that we need that space in the near term. And that History Center's become a very integral part to the city and celebrating the roots of our community. So it kind of was able to address several different things and certainly help lend towards that long-term goal of our downtown being a destination, a place where people come to. And so, again, it's just planting the seed to start the conversation. If council has an interest in learning more, we can come back with some numbers after we have the facility looked at to see what would need to be done minimally to bring it up to something that not Class A, but at least something that it's tied to the city and the roof doesn't leak and the toilets flush and there's no critters in there. So,
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
Because it was such an important part of the survey, I would definitely like to see us at least get some numbers. The potential community partner, I think, is a great idea. And we have a pretty full committee that is working on this type of center and things. So I think that definitely some numbers and at least the next step would be warranted. I also know that our planning department could use some extra room if the historic area could be relocated at a convenient spot and still be utilized for our community.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
I too have been complaining for the last couple of years to either do something with it or get it on the market. I don't like it just sitting over there. I think that the mayor come up with a very, very good idea to look into. Those are both very good uses we need. And as far as giving away or using stuff properly, I think while I've been on the council here, we've donated in excess of, I think it's been 4 fire engines that we paid $500,000 or $600,000 for. And I don't know how many computers that we have bought and donated away. So I don't look at it as that being bad. I do think that the mayor said right. We need to find somebody that is willing to get a 501(c) and start looking at it. I don't see this as any different than the civic center that we've been looking at. Other than I think this is a doable deal. And if it isn't doable and we don't want to do it, then I want it on the market. I want it off the market. I mean, on the market and off our tax, on the tax rolls. I'll get my tongue straight here in a minute.
Well, I hear at least enough of you stating, come back with some numbers and let's continue the conversation. True?
Madam Mayor,
Kavanaugh.
I guess I want to make sure that
Kavanaugh.
I'm fairly clear. To your comment that you don't want to waste staff time and resources on something if there's not an appetite from council, has me even more convinced that it sounds like it's a great project and a great idea, but maybe just not the right time. And maybe it's because we're in budget season and we're well aware of the needs of fire stations and police training resources, and I start to negotiate where dollars should best be spent. And man, I love the idea of a children's museum and of a more permanent home for our historical society, but I almost have to agree with Councilman Palmer and Councilman Byrd. If we don't have a use that can go in right now, turnkey, and move on, then maybe we should get it on the market. So I would hate to waste staff resources and time where I feel probably 6 months if they come back and say it's going to cost $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, that I would be opposed to it. So
$1 million, but we don't know that.
But is it $1 million? Are you then okay with it?
Madam Mayor?
No.
Mr. Byrd.
My thought is, I don't want to put any city money in it. I mean, we're donating the property. I'm like the mayor, yeah, I'd like to go over there and make sure we're donating something.
rather
that
get
isn't gonna
$500,000
fall on
for the
somebody's
land
head. But my thought is get somebody excited, given a location. That is the city's donation, in my opinion. And then having, I mean, I can name you a dozen things in Meridian that's been done that way, only it wasn't city property, it was somebody. Speedway purchased property and then somebody put it together. So anyway, but you've got to have some kind of an idea. And at least she brought something forward to do something with it. And if we're not going to do something with it, I want it listed tomorrow. And I've been harping that for 2 years. At least we got something to think about.
Well, Public Works put together some numbers a couple of years ago that can be polished up, and we can set this back on an agenda sometime after perhaps our work group on the Children's Museum can take a look at it and see if it's something that they'd be interested in fundraising for and that sort of thing as well.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I agree with that, and I think it would be a lot easier to obtain community partners if we had some at least rough kind of numbers that they're looking at, as opposed to just saying, hey, build a museum, we'll give you a building. So I think that would be really helpful for the conversation.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Palmer.
Madam Mayor, whatever the numbers are, some of us are crunching hard to find $781,000 to fund the things that we feel are important that were unfunded, and not have to increase taxes on the taxpayers. I don't know when the last time we sold a significant piece of property was. I just see things like Old City Hall, other properties that the city owns all over downtown, that we just convert into other things that continue to be expenses to the taxpayers. And I think, hey, let's take the opportunity, sell it, let somebody else find a private use for it, make some money on it, and pay taxes on it. That'll help make up for some of the $781,000 we're looking to have everyone else pay.
Any other comments?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Borton?
I'm listening first. I'm using my cards. I am hearing all the comments. From my perspective, would be extremely cautious and initially reluctant. And in all candor to staff that may be tasked with going forward on something like that, that type of project would truly rise to the level of necessitating and warranting city funding in light of the other expenses that some of the other council members have brought up. And we're particularly sensitive to it at the budget time, but that it would take a lot of analysis for me to get my head around how something like that would truly be viable and make sense fiscally for the city to do. So I struggle with that, and the idea of some department within the city, if there's space in City Hall that is lacking, that comes as a surprise to me too. So that's maybe something else to explore. That would shock me if that were in fact the case, so that we would need space. So those two things they give me great pause. If there's additional data, I would always love to see it, but I would struggle seeing how that would be a good project to bring forward right now.
I appreciate your comments. I don't think I mentioned anything about asking for funds for it. It was really to look at, is this something that can be turned over? And would they be interested in accepting that kind of thing to really start fundraising and have a place that people can then visualize, which always makes fundraising easier. In terms of the History Center, that's always been a temporary quarters for it. That someday, as community development grows, that is the area they grow into. We have, since one of our Historical Preservation Commission members passed away, been talking about looking at that permanent place so that they're not passed from the former old high school to City Hall to a closet somewhere, to give them a permanent home and a place where people say, oh yeah, there's the History Center, and let's go check it out. So it's more in the spirit of finding a permanent home, an opportunity, and seeing what the appetite of City Council was to that. And if council would entertain looking at that as that potential site and doesn't want to bring it up to a standard that we would expect our buildings to be in, we can just, if there's the appetite for the location itself, say for the work group to consider it as is, and that they would need to bring it up to whatever standard they would like to see it in. So those, again, I was planting a seed, didn't anticipate having a lengthy discussion on it, but seeing what the appetite was. And so I feel like I'm at the same point I was when I started this conversation. Just maybe a little bit less or more fuzzy.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Borton.
I thought there was great clarity in the comments and great candor, that people are generally extremely cautious that something like that could be a viable project to entertain, and that it could truly be done without cost to the city. I mean, there's not a business model that allows one of those things to operate absent government subsidies. It's just whether or not the government entity believes it's necessary to subsidize that use. So if it exists, I think it truly does exist with government subsidy. The question is whether this city's willing to cross that line at this point, in light of the growth demands that it has in its other more core services. That's what I'm uncertain of. I think Councilman Cavanagh captured it pretty well when he spoke to it. It's a wonderful community asset and can be extremely valuable, but you have to balance those costs with some of the other costs that we're trying to cover that might be more core community functions. So I thought it was, for me at least, it was a good conversation, and there's more data to gather to try and articulate what that, not only the capital improvement cost, but then the subsidy for its operations. That's great data to learn, but as long as we're all upfront about any hesitation that it could actually work.
I think, and maybe Frank can correct me, but when they were in the old high school, the Meridian Historical Society funded the operations when they were over there. The city has a line item for the Historical Preservation Society, which has also funded work study at particular times when they needed research. But other than that, I don't recall subsidizing any operational costs from the city. The Meridian Historical Society does have a 501c3. The Children's Museum Work Group has talked about the need to establish a 501c3 so they could raise funds. They've had individuals like the Discovery Center representative on there that has brought perspective on that aspect of it. I don't believe that the Children's Museum or the History Center has had any expectation of any assistance from the city. So I don't, we haven't set a precedence on that, and I don't anticipate that we would.
Madam Mayor, then, if I may, another comment. Maybe some additional feedback that would be great is the demonstration of children's museums or museums in general that are self-sufficient, that don't rely on local or state subsidies to cover their operations would be beneficial. I'm not aware of one of those that exists, but potentially they're out there.
They have all kinds of
Jumps on a
models
museum.
that they've brought to the discussion. This really wasn't a presentation from the Children's Museum Group. It was just the appetite of giving them perhaps a location that they could create what they would like to bring to this community. As Councilman Byrd said, that would be the city's contribution to bringing that asset into our downtown. I have no proposal for long-term subsidies or anything like that. When we, and it would even be different from, I think, Mo Brooks Field in Story Park. We wouldn't maintain it. We wouldn't do any of that. This would be, this is for a community asset. It's the communities, not the cities. So. So I feel like I have a split on 3 are open for more information and 3 are, 1 is not at all. At least I never have to worry about what Ty thinks. At least he tells me. I'm not sure about
Madam Mayor, I guess if
Councilmember Kavner or Councilmember
if you're asking, again, you planted a germ of an idea, but if you're asking me to make a decision today, my recommendation would be to put it on the market.
Okay.
In light of the discussion that we've had here, that would be my today.
Okay, so just further context. This property cannot continue to look the way it is. So I have told our staff either we have to make a decision. this can be an opportunity for a location for a permanent history center / children's museum or whatever. It can be put on the for sale list, but it has a dead piece of property or piece of grass in front of it. Its shed next to it is looking really bad. That's a city piece of property, and we either need to take care of it, get rid of it, or turn it over to someone who will. So we can delay it longer, and it's going to look even worse, and that doesn't look good on the city. So that's the whole reason I came up with this idea is we have to do something with it.
Madam Mayor, the property's been in that state for 3 years?
Not quite 3 years, but
3 years this summer?
It's getting worse with no attention.
Then I guess that only motivates me more to say, without a viable plan presented before us, all the more reason to dispose of the property that we no longer need.
I'm asking you to come back with a viable plan, or, I don't care. I don't care. What would you like to do?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Borton.
just describing reluctance, but you've also shared information that, again, for me, I've not heard this before, so it's the first time to consider it.
I didn't really want to have a conversation about it either.
All right. Well,
Otherwise, I would have been more prepared.
Well, but Madam Mayor, it's helpful, I think, to hear even off-the-cuff comments. If there's more information, like you've described about individuals in a work group who maybe have already internally discussed how they may operate it and/or fundraise it, and the limits on any commitment of what the city may be asked in the future to provide, things like that, I'd love to know all that. We don't have that today. It's not part of today's discussion, but that would be helpful to give you a more refined opinion on whether it should go forward.
And I would agree with you, but before I offer that as an idea, I wanted to make sure. I didn't want to say, hey, this is an idea that council could shoot down at the next meeting. So it's, if there's an open to the discussion, then we would like to initiate the discussion with the appropriate parties.
We take a vote?
Madam Mayor, I don't know what part of the three I was on, but I'm open to the discussion.
Okay.
Certainly, I mean, I love digging into the data and the weeds of it. Maybe my reluctance will be overturned with the information that's provided. There's certainly not a bright line in the sand on this one, but just very candid with the concerns of what I might find. But
Or at
gladly
least be
discuss it.
very clear in your expectations that
Yes.
it would be turned over without a dollar spent.
I'd love to continue that discussion.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Burt.
I agree with that. I absolutely don't want any partnerships, because the partnerships always wind up costing us. We turn the property over to them, they get it built, get it done. That's mine, but I think it's a great idea, and let's see if somebody wants to pursue it.
Just want to know if it's an idea you would be interested in exploring further, and it seems, short of one person, that yes, it is.
Madam Mayor? I wasn't
Mr.
exactly
Palmer.
sure where it was, but now that I'm looking at it, that is a sweet piece of land. Let's sell that sucker, turn it into taxable property, and see what cool thing the private sector puts there, instead of us just kind of propping it up or letting somebody else prop it up. I mean, like Councilman Borton pointed out, unless we're closing down an art gallery and evicting a congressman, I don't see a big hurry to move it from right there, where it brings people into the center of city government, an opportunity to learn more about what it is that we do here. Just because they came to look at some history, they might learn something else about us here when they come. I think it's a great place to house them, as long as we can keep them here and sell that and see what cool thing private sector puts there. As if you need more clarification.
I was clear on that one. Okay, I will put it back on another agenda after it's had conversation with other groups. Thank you for that interesting conversation. Item 9E, HR. We're just trying to make this meeting longer.
No, I thought it was going to be short.
I want to get out of here.
Because I heard it in
I told my wife, I said,
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Thank you for having me. For those of you who don't know, my name is Christina Barney. I'm the HR generalist with the HR department. I handle benefits, leaves, and wellness is my general focus. So tonight, I'm going to go over and give you a benefits update. I'll be presenting some information regarding the city's benefits, and we'll touch briefly on the benefit plans as we discuss the 2017 renewals. But the majority of the information provided here tonight is in regards to the medical benefit. So in April, Crystal and Todd came before you and presented this information. This is just a brief summary of the presentations they presented, both in April and in June. The Benefits Committee has reconvened in January and has been discussing benefit options and plans for 2017. We have been working hard towards no plan design changes and a possible increase to the HSA contribution. We did go out to market for our medical benefits, our flexible spending, and our COBRA services. We budgeted a 9% placeholder for 2017, and that was based on our experience rating. 5% of that 9 we anticipated for a ACA surcharge. However, we have been informed that we have a reprieve for this year. The actual renewal rates weren't available until June, and I will dig into that here in just a moment, and then bring a formal recommendation back to you, which is what I'm prepared to do this evening. So for 2017, our renewal rates are very nice looking. So Blue Cross came back and they were very competitive. We did go out to market, as I said. We had 5 other vendors that provided us medical quotes. They were Blue Cross of Idaho, Regents, Pacific Source, Aetna, and Select Health. Blue Cross was competitive in their bid, providing a rate pass, which is a 0% increase for 2017, and that also allowed us no plan design changes. The pooling point, we are still undetermined on whether that is going to move from $150,000 to $225,000, and that just means that any claims above that pooling point are not charged to our experience rating, so it doesn't drive our rates. Both dental providers, Delta Dental and Willamette, as well as VSP and United Heritage, also offered us a rate pass. For the flexible spending and COBRA services, we did go out to market on that. We had 3 vendors that provided us quotes. However, Prime Pay was the most competitive. They did offer a 2-year rate pass, and they did waive the annual fee of $150 for the FSA and $75 for the COBRA services. The EAP services will increase by 5% or $812 for 2017. So planning for the future, we would like to recommend using that 9% placeholder as a reserve. The Benefits Committee is exploring different options, different ways to help control costs, one of those being self-funding. We, as the Benefits Committee, have discussed self-funding for many, many years now. It is a mechanism, it's a long-term solution. It is a way for us to help control costs, buffer increases, have more flexibility in plan design. And there really aren't a whole lot of other options available to us to help control those costs, but self-funding is one of those. So what I want to do this evening is give you a little context. Currently, we are fully insured, which means that the medical premiums are determined by the carrier, which is Blue Cross in this case. We have a fixed annual premium. We have fixed costs every year, which include admin fees, health insurer fee, premium tax. They are built into our premium. The insurer, Blue Cross, maintains the risk and pays the claims out of the premiums we pay them. And any reserves, which means that any premium paid that is not paid out in claims, is kept by the carrier. In the self-funded structure, the medical premiums are just simply suggested by the carrier and by our Mercer, our benefit broker. The ultimate cost of those benefits are determined by the benefits committee and then ultimately approved by City Council. The fixed costs are a little different in that it's admin fees, health insurer fees, and a stop-loss premium, which are billed monthly. Premium tax is reduced. The employer maintains the risk and pays the claims out of a trust. Any reserves are held by the employer. So again, those premiums that we collect are kept by us if they're not paid out in claims. And this is a long-term solution that many other public agencies use to help stabilize impacts to the budget and the plan structure. So Mercer provided us some data on self-funding. Unfortunately, in the data that they collected, this is national data, they didn't do the smaller organizations, which is the category that we fall in. So I asked our benefit broker, Mercer, to provide data on the smaller companies that they service. And of the 1 to 1,000 range that they cover, 50% of their clients are self-funded, just to kind of give you an idea in the scope of things. So I also want to give you an idea of what other agencies in Idaho are doing. City of Pocatello and City of Idaho Falls are fully insured, the same structure that we have today. Boise, Nampa, and Caldwell all have been self-funded. Boise for 12 years, Nampa for 25, and Caldwell for 26. Boise does go, and Caldwell goes out every few years and has Mercer doesn't do an analysis for them to see if they should remain self-funded and have chosen to stay. City of Caldwell, for instance, last year, their claims were running really high. They received a quote of 26% increase on the self-funded side. They also received a quote for fully insured, and it was 10% higher. So it worked out to $135 more per employee per month versus keeping the money in their own account. So the carrier would have kept that additional $135 rather than City of Caldwell. So they stayed self-funded. I wanted to give you some of the pros and cons. I'm not going to go through all of this, but some of the high-level pros that there are is the city maintains the reserves, as I've already said. Various cost savings, including up to an annual 5% on the ACA charges. So with a self-funded, we don't incur that 5% ACA charge because we're assuming the risk or the liability. We also have more control and better able to manage risk and the stabilization of our premiums with the reserve funds that we build. Some of the cons include fluctuation throughout the year, increased employer involvement, and increased fiduciary responsibility. Right now, the city is in a downward trend, which means that we don't have as much in claims as we have seen. And so self-funding, it is a good time for us to look at self-funding at this point. some of the components of fully insured and self-funding, so you can kind of at a glance get a high-level overview of the differences between the two. With the fully insured, the fixed costs include profit, risk changes, taxes, retention, and then with the self-funded, fixed costs are limited to ASO fees, stop premium, and ACA fees. So there are some differences high level between the two and how the plans are administered, and then how they can work to benefit us. There are also requirements by the Department of Insurance for a self-funded account. The process takes approximately a year to complete and consists of an application fee, Department of Insurance annual fees of approximately $540. Additional broker fees, they have to provide actuarial reports, which we submit to the Department of Insurance, a trust agreement, and then the reserve amount that we have to keep on hand, which is approximately 3 months worth of premiums. So this kind of gives you an idea, if we were to go self-funded, just a general cost. So then that leads us to the formal recommendation for this evening. We would like to, as the Benefits Committee, recommend maintaining the placeholder in reserves for benefit management. This would allow us to begin the reserve needed for self-funding if the city should choose to go that direction. If not, it at least allows us the ability to buffer any increases we may experience in the future. As I said, we had a 5% reprieve from the ACA this year. There's nothing saying that that won't come next year. So if we do have that money in reserves, we can effectively cover that 5% without affecting any of the plan design or the cost to the employee. It also allows us as a benefit committee to focus efforts on exploring options rather than redefining the benefit to fit our current budget and structure. So it allows a better use of the benefit committee's time to plan for the future. Fully insured plans place organizations in a position to be reactionary in response to uncontrollable market conditions. By considering other options, we may be able to gain greater control of future costs and provide the ability to give our employees a wonderful benefit package and at a reasonable cost to the city and its employees. So tonight, I'm not asking for any decisions. It's just to bring back a formal recommendation to be able to place that placeholder in reserves to help mitigate costs for the future, and then allow the Benefits Committee to explore some other options. We have looked at Marketplace as well as self-funding. So I'm not sold on self-funding being the answer, but we need the ability to look at that. And unfortunately, we're in a position now where we just kind of wait for Blue Cross to give us rates, and then we scramble to make it fit in the current budget that we have, and then we move to the next plan year. And it would be a better use of our time if we were able to just say, okay, this is what it is, we have the money to cover it, now what are we going to do for future costs? So I will stand for any questions.
Sorry, Dean. What is the difference? Do you know we spend how much per employee for the fully insured versus the self-funded by Napa or Caldwell? I think Boise has much more robust program than the others. They're more comparable to ours.
So I did look at some of that information. I wasn't able to get the cost per employee per month from Boise and Nampa, but I do have it for Caldwell. We are approximately $200 less. However, there are lots of variables into why, the employee count, how many families they have on their plan. There are a lot of variables that skew that number. So it's kind of hard to look just at that without doing a true comparison of FTEs to FTEs, families to families.
So what's our cost?
It's just above $1,000.
Okay. I think that's what Nampa's is.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
I have Mercer working on that information right now.
And then the wellness program that has started to show a more positive impact on our experience rating. Who benefits from that? Well, other than the health benefits, but does that help reduce our premiums? I doubt we would ever see a decrease in what we pay.
Right.
But it does help minimize the increase.
It does. I've put some information together over the last 5 years, the data that I've been able to collect from the wellness program in comparison to our experience rating, and it is showing a trend. When the participation in the wellness program is lower, our experience rating tends to be higher. We get more participation in the wellness program, and we have a lower experience rating or a lower premium. So that is what the trend is showing at this point, and right now we're on that downward trend. So we have more participation, lower experience rating. And that benefits the city in lower premiums and the employees. They get to keep their benefits, and we don't have to increase the premium that they pay for it.
And if we move to the menu that the Benefits Committee's been talking about, by self-funding, would you be penalized with less people in the program, or? And I know that's been the hesitancy in being fully insured is by removing numbers increases your insured costs.
So it works similar in fully funded and self-funded, or fully insured, excuse me, and self-funded, in that the claims are spread over your total member count. So if you remove members, then you have less people to spread that cost over, so it ends up going up. So they work the same regardless.
Okay. Good. Other questions? Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10A is ordinance 16-1699. I will ask our city clerk to read this by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. An ordinance H-2016-0030 Howry Lane subdivision for annexation rezone of a parcel of land situated in the west half of the northeast quarter of Section 33, Township 3 North, Range 1 East, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, as described in Attachment A, and annexing certain lands and territory situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the City of Meridian as requested by the City of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of said lands from RUT to R8 medium density residential district in the Meridian City Code, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance, and providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing an effective date.
You've heard the ordinance read by title only. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to hear it read in its entirety? If not, council, what's your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Madam Milan.
I move that we approve ordinance number 16-1699 with suspension of rules.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 16-1699. Clerk, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Milam.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye. Item 10B, ordinance number 16-1700. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. An ordinance RZH-2016-0040-907 Northwest 2nd Street for the rezone of a parcel of land in the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 32, Township 3 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, being part of Lot 2 and all of Lots 3 and 4 of Block 3 of Nide subdivision as shown in Book 2 of Plats at page 75 in the Office of the Recorder, Ada County, Idaho, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of R4 Medium Low Density Residential to OT Old Town District in the Meridian City Code, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance, and providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing an effective date.
You've heard that ordinance 16-1700 read by title only. Is there anybody who'd like to hear it in its entirety? If not, council,
Mr. President,
Madam Mylum.
I move that we approve ordinance number 16-1700 with suspension of rules.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 16-1700. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Under other items, we have an executive session per Idaho State Code 74-206A. I will ask for a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we go into executive session as per Idaho State Code 74-206A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mylum has stepped out.
It's the Dolesby curse again.
I know.